Coming up on this Thursday edition of Newsline at noon, the U.S. Congress passes a bipartisan deal to extend Washington's borrowing capacity and end the government shutdown just hours before the default deadline. It looks like Koreans will face another power shortage crisis next summer after the government orders the replacement of key parts for 2 new nuclear reactors due to come online next year. The reactors were found to contain parts with fake safety certificates. Plus, on the opening day of the Seoul Conference on Cyberspace, President Park Geun-hye calls for concerted international efforts to fight cyber terrorism. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
Where's the best place for bibimbap?
Les Jeux Olympiques d'hiver se dérouleront-ils à Pyeongchang?
هل أنتم حقاً سابع أكبر مصدر في العالم؟
この歌手は誰ですか？你好，最近哪部电视剧的人气最旺？
Korea is attracting interest from around the world. The more you know, the more you want to know. Dynamic Korea.
Thanks for joining us. You're watching Newsline at noon, and I'm Choi in Seoul.
Very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Now, they left it to the very last possible moment, but the U.S. House of Representatives has, within the last hour, passed a budget bill to raise the nation's debt ceiling and end the government shutdown.
U.S. President Barack Obama said that he would sign the bill immediately. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The Republican-controlled House of Representatives has passed a bipartisan budget deal that will put an end to a fiscal impasse that's put the U.S. on the brink of what would have been a potentially disastrous debt default. The bipartisan deal was crafted in the Senate earlier in the day and approved with 81 votes in favor and 18 against the deal, which will reopen the government and raise the federal debt limit. U.S. President Barack Obama, speaking after the Senate deal was reached, said he supported the agreement and thanked the leaders of both parties for coming together to hammer out a compromise.
Once this agreement arrives on my desk, I will sign it immediately. We'll begin reopening our government immediately. And we can begin to lift this cloud of uncertainty and unease from our businesses and from the American people.
The deal will fund the government until January 15th and extend the country's $16.7 trillion borrowing limit until February 7th. The U.S. Treasury Department had earlier warned that a default might trigger a financial crisis and recession that could echo the events of 2008. The agreement also leaves President Obama's signature healthcare law virtually intact, representing a major defeat for Republican conservatives in the House who had wanted to either defund or delay it. The deal also stipulates the creation of a panel comprised of members of the House and Senate to draw up another longer-term budget deal plan by December 13th, which means that this could be the beginning of another round in a long-running debate over the federal budget, and in larger terms, the size and scope of the U.S. government. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Financial markets around the world have rallied on the U.S. Senate's approval of the bill earlier in the day. But even with the deal, economists say the financial damage incurred by the shutdown has run into the billions of dollars. Our Yurian reports.
Wall Street is finally seeing the period of so-called political risk lifted after Senate leaders hammered out an agreement to end the 16-day government shutdown and raise the debt ceiling. Experts see it as a clear sign to buy stocks.
What does it mean? This fight is now about how much the federal deficit shrinks. Whether it goes down $200 billion or $300 billion or $500 billion is now not relevant. It's in a downward path. Stocks are going higher.
Boosted by the deal, U.S. markets closed up more than 1% higher across the board. The S&P 500 was up 1.4% for the day, closing at only 5 points off a record closing high seen in mid-September. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed over 200 points, or 1.3% higher, at 15,373.83. Asian stocks also rose on the news. Korea's benchmark Kospi opened over 0.6% higher, and Japan's Topix index jumped over 1%, pushing the benchmark index towards a 5-month high. The threat of default seems to have retreated, but economists say the damage has already run into the billions. Ratings firm Standard & Poor's estimates the amount to be $24 billion. Forecasting firm Macroeconomics Advisor says the 2-week shutdown has trimmed about 0.3 percentage points from the U.S. fourth quarter growth. Consumer confidence has plunged to the lowest level since the collapse of Lehman Brothers in 2008, and the United States short-term borrowing costs have soared, with investors demanding interest payments threefold higher than a few weeks ago. And as the deal agreed by Congress only extends the debt limit until January, economists say the absence of a solid deal will continue to create market uncertainty in the long term, amounting to even greater losses for the world's largest economy. Yuri-an, Arirang News.
Back here in the country, power authorities announced Wednesday that control cables used in 2 nuclear reactors currently under construction have failed to pass quality tests. The construction delay is expected to cause a power shortage crisis next year, similar to the one seen this past summer. Kim Hyun-ji reports.
Shingori nuclear reactors 3 and 4 were supposed to be operational by next August or September. But Wednesday's findings mean the new starting date will be pushed back by up to a year. Control cables supplied by JS Cable failed to pass quality assurance tests, which were conducted after the Nuclear Safety and Security Commission received a tip in late April that fake test reports had been used in the reactors. The control cable is a device that sends a signal to the safety system in the event of an accident at the plant. The parts in question will have to be replaced, a process which is expected to take 6 months to 1 year.
We'll use all our resources to replace the problematic parts safely and promptly.
Shingori reactors 3 and 4 have the capacity of 1.4 million kilowatts each. Experts say the postponement will create a more acute power shortage crisis next year than the one the country went through this past summer. Nearly half of the nation's 23 nuclear power plants have been shut down for one reason or another, and this has left a power vacuum of some 3 million kilowatts. Power authorities project the disqualification of control cables used in Shingori reactors 3 and 4 will inflict damage of some 3 trillion won or $2.8 billion per year on the Korean economy. This is because it is much more expensive to use coal and liquefied natural gas to make up for the power loss every day. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
Seoul is playing host to one of the biggest internet conferences in the world over the next 2 days. The Seoul Conference on Cyberspace kicked off earlier today and has brought together over 1,500 officials and experts from nearly 90 countries and 18 international organizations. President Park Geun-hye attended the opening ceremony this morning, where she called for international regulations to prevent cyber terrorism and to guarantee an open and secure cyberspace. She said threats against cybersecurity, such as personal information leaks and the spread of malignant codes, are increasing in the current internet environment. The president called on the world to create a global cooperation network to find solutions for the challenges they face. Now we're going to take a closer look at what's actually on the agenda at the Cyberspace Conference from our Song Ji-son.
Cybersecurity is not the only matter being discussed during the Seoul Cyberspace Conference 2013. The main theme of this year's Cyberspace Conference is global prosperity for an open and secure cyberspace. Top of the agenda is economic growth and development for all in terms of internet economy. All economic transactions made and all activities done on the internet can be defined as being part of the internet economy. However, there is still no widely accepted measure to capture the extent of the entire internet economy. But many developed countries note the importance of establishing an international definition and the need to develop related policies. According to the OECD's Internet Economy Outlook 2012, the internet economy accounts for more than 8% of the national GDP in the UK and 7.3% in Korea. The ICT-related internet economy is also performing better than other sectors, both in growth rate and job creation. In any country, connectivity and infrastructure are a must to spur the internet economy. About 70% of households in OECD member countries are connected to the internet, and Korea is atop the list at nearly 100%. As host of this year's conference, Korea is expected to provide its participants with know-how, and the main focus will be on devising means to share that knowledge with developing countries.
Previous conferences were mostly led by developed Western countries, but this year's Seoul Conference provides an open discussion for all. Developing countries will also get a chance to participate and devise development models to practice.
Participating countries will also cooperate to set up policy guidelines and solutions at the conference to integrate the internet into their economies in a way that will lead to economic growth. 송지선, Arirang News.
Korea's producer prices dropped for the 12th straight month in September due to a fall in the price of agricultural products and the local currency's gain against the greenback. The Bank of Korea says producer prices fell 1.8% on year in September, after dipping 1.3% the previous month. Prices of fruits, vegetables, fisheries products, they all declined the most as there was no typhoon damage in August and September. The Korean won appreciated nearly 3.5% to the US dollars in September compared to the last year. And the data comes as the central bank froze the key interest rate at 2.5% for the 5th straight month in October.
For your fill of Korean and international news. Join Choi Yu-sun and Mark Broom every weekday at lunchtime. Newsline at noon.
Plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government restructuring bills.
3 Koreans were among the 49 passengers and crew members who were killed Wednesday after the plane they were traveling in crashed into the Mekong River in Laos. Officials say the Lao Airlines plane crashed while attempting to land in bad weather at Baguette Airport in the south of the country. No one on board the plane survived. Foreigners from some 10 countries, including 7 from France, were among the dead. Korean embassy officials have identified the 3 Korean victims as Lee Jae-sang and Lee Hong-jik, both males in their 40s, and Lee Gang-pil, a businessman in his late 50s. A Panamanian cargo ship sank off Korea's eastern coast earlier this week, killing 9 crew members and causing a minor oil spill. 7 other sailors were caught in rough waters for 12 hours awaiting rescue before they were brought safely ashore. Our Son Jung-in brings us their story.
The Panamanian-registered Cheng Louis 15 had been carrying 19 sailors, 18 Chinese and 1 Vietnamese. Most of the 8,000-ton vessel sank, leaving only part of the mast visible. When it was over, 9 sailors had died, 2 were missing, and 1 had been rescued. The 7 remaining crew members, all identified as Chinese nationals, clung to the top of the mast as they awaited rescue. But the rescue helicopter struggled to approach them on the open sea as strong winds and high waves stymied the operation. It wasn't until 12 hours later, after fighting to survive in the pitch dark, struggling in the cold water and against rough waves, that all 7 crew members were rescued with the help of a rope that the rescue team had tied to the seawall. The cargo ship anchored off the port city of Pohang on Tuesday afternoon, but high waves forced it against the seawall, and it went down 900 meters from the port, according to the Korea Coast Guard. Coast Guard officials said it was a tough rescue operation as they had to fight against gale force winds of 30 meters per second and waves 8 meters high. They also said that the ship's cargo, 130 tons of oil and diesel fuel, had spilled into the water. Officials say that the accident occurred in part because the vessel had ignored their advice not to dock and evacuate out to sea after a high seas warning was issued.
We'll do our best to prevent future oil spills by mobilizing additional response vessels and guard ships in the water.
The Coast Guard had recovered the bodies of the 9 crew members who died in the accident, but 2 are still missing. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Over in Japan, at least 17 people are confirmed dead and nearly 100 injured after a powerful typhoon swept through the eastern part of the country. Reports say the strongest typhoon Japan has seen in a decade caused the greatest number of fatalities on the island of Izu-Oshima, south of Tokyo. At one point, some 12 centimeters of rain pounded the island in a span of just 1 hour. Landslides and flooding from the downpour killed 16 on the island, while more than 40 are still unaccounted for. The typhoon also passed close to the crippled Fukushima nuclear plant, but authorities say they seem to have weathered the storm with radiation readings kept under the safety limit. The two-day international talks on curbing Iran's nuclear ambitions were substantive and forward-looking, according to chief delegates from the European Union and Iran. Wrapping up discussions in Geneva Wednesday, EU Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton said the permanent UN Security Council member nations, plus Germany and Iran, had the most detailed talks ever. Nuclear and sanctions experts from both sides will convene before the next round of official dialogue in early November. Earlier, the Iranian deputy foreign minister said lowering the levels of Tehran's uranium enrichment and allowing surprise visits to its nuclear facilities could be part of a deal. The latest round of negotiations come after a relative moderate Hassan Rouhani was elected president earlier this year.
Syria's Christians are leaving the country in droves, terrified of extremist groups linked to al-Qaeda. A senior church leader in Syria has told the BBC that more than 450,000 Christians out of a total population of 1.75 million have been displaced or left the country. Even as the war rages on, the church leader said international agreement over chemical weapons offered a unique opportunity for peace, but stressed the foreign fighters in Syria had to be driven out of the country. The cream of the world's best ballet companies are in Seoul for the Ballet World, a festival that showcases a mix of both classical and modern pieces. Our Connie Lee reports.
From dance numbers that move to some electronic beats, to the more elegant, traditional ballet pieces, this is just a snippet of this year's ballet festival at the Seoul Arts Center. The K-Ballet World, in its 5th run this year, started Wednesday with an opening performance that ended with prima ballerina Kim Ji-young gracing the stage.
This is a great opportunity to see performances by other dancers and see the works of different choreographers. So this really feels like a fun festival.
The week-long festival, hosted by the Korea Ballet Association, features the highlights of different performances from each dance company involved. This includes Korea's top ballet companies, which are Universal Ballet and Korean National Ballet.
In one show, you can see performances by distinguished dance companies in Korea, as well as the works from choreographers from abroad. This festival is an opportunity for a unique experience.
Dancers from Japan are also here, and German's Gautier Dance Company is ready to showcase some of its dynamic moves that is not often seen in traditional ballet.
Gautier dance, you could expect that use humor. Humor is very special. Not many people use humor with dance, and also it's very athletic. So we're talking about tricks and lifting the women in ways that are not normally lifted in ballet. Upside down and crooked and very athletic. I think the Koreans will dig it. Yeah.
The festival also features performances by Han Sung-woo, or the first Korean male dancer of the American Ballet Theater. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
10 billion, that's how many baguettes are eaten by people in France each and every year. But only one can be crowned the best baguette of Paris. A contest was hosted earlier this year for bakers eager to make a name for themselves. And for the first time, a Korean baker earned a spot on the coveted top 10 list. Our Paulie has more on passionate expat bakers.
The classic baguette is a cultural symbol of Paris, and every year a time-honored competition is held among hundreds of bakeries to see who has the best bread in the City of Light. The panel of judges closely examines the size, weight, smell, and taste of each baguette. Baker So Young-sang made history at the annual event this past April when his entry placed 8th.
The French take great pride in making products. Since I wanted to compete, I knew I had to hold myself to the same standards. Baguettes are eaten every day, but no one gets tired of them. So I realized that there is something unique about this kind of bread.
So is the first Korean baker to crack the top 10 in the contest's 20-year history. It's been a long journey for the Korea-born baker who began making bread in his late 30s and then moved to France to learn from the best. Now, after 10 years, he works alongside 7 other Korean employees and serves more than 900 customers a day.
I come to this bakery 2 to 3 times a week. The bread tastes delicious and is great value for the quality.
There are some 1,200 bakeries in the city of Paris alone. And despite the stiff competition, many aspiring professional bakers have traveled from Korea.
I enjoy making bread, and that's why I came to this country to learn here. For the French, life means working a few hours and coming home, then eventually retirement. I think we seem to look a little higher with regard to our dreams.
These tireless bakers are constantly researching and testing new recipes to find the perfect balance of aromas and flavors.
One cannot help but admire the French when making traditional French bread. For me, baking is one of the greatest joys and sources of strength in my life.
Paul Yi, Arirang News.
Well, it's another bright and sunny day, but rather chilly here in the nation. And let's get a weather update now with our Lee Ji-yeon, who's standing by at the Weather Center. Good afternoon to you.
Hello there, guys. Well, isn't it too chilly to enjoy mid-October? And with the weather cooling off, it's been harder and harder to get out of bed in the morning for me.
Oh, I know what you mean. With the autumn chill in the air, it's really been difficult to get up the past couple of days.
Right, and it feels like we've been waking up in the early winter for the last couple of days. And this morning, I saw commuters wearing scarves, sweater, and thick jacket to keep them warm. But the afternoon highs will be soaring to nearly 20 degrees Celsius. So I think it's better to dress in layers than wear a heavy coat. So we can just take off the extra layers if it starts to feel too warm. Well, right now, the sky is looking mostly to partly clear, but some of the clouds might be rolling into the nations as we go through the day. And the outlook for tomorrow is looking similar to today's. Morning lows will stay on the cool side in the central region, and temperature will soar to 20 in most regions with lots of clouds in the afternoon, or sunshine that is. And Saturday should be similar to Friday, so we will have some pleasant weather for the next couple of days. Now, today should be the coolest day of this season so far, so let's take a look at the readings for today. Now, Seoul will top out at 18 degrees Celsius, which is 64 degrees in Fahrenheit, and Daegu and Gwangju should make it to 19, while Busan should be the mildest region to be at 20 with a good amount of sunshine. Now, let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like Jeju should top out at 19, and it will be 18 in Daejeon, but Mount Kumgang will stay in the single digits even in the afternoon. Don't forget to bundle up before heading out, and that's all for Korea. And here's the global forecast for viewers around the world. That's all for me today. Enjoy your lunch break and hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Now back to Mark and Yusan in the studio.
Thank you very much, Jion, for the weather report there. And that's pretty much all from us. And as I keep reminding you, you can always check out what's happening news-wise on our website, which can be found at arirang.co.kr/news.
And join us again tomorrow right here on Newsline at noon.